I'd like to welcome everyone to our St. Cloud City Council workshop this Thursday, November the 4th, here in City Hall Council chambers. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Blackwell?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Trace?
Here.
Councilmember Matheny? Here. Councilmember Askew?
Here.
I hereby call this meeting to order, and we will begin with a discussion regarding legislative priorities with the illustrious city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, I sent you in your backup information the legislative priorities I'm recommending based on consultation with our lobbyist and along with the meeting we had with Mr. Hawkins. And that includes, obviously, we always want to protect our hometown rule, a right to self-govern, and then support any legislation that helps small business recovery. And for the allocation asked this year, I'd like to be able to request $1 million to start Phase 1 of Chisholm Park Master Plan. And again, that's going to include boat trailer parking, some spine roads, north parking lot, south parking lot, additional sidewalks, the observation deck, street and parking lot lights, and crosswalks. Again, as you know, our alternative water supply is at issue, and we continue to look for appropriations from the legislature and support on that via allocation or through grants, and those grants will pursue. Sorry. Also, as you know, Metro Plan, Orlando, Osceola County, and St. Cloud are partnering to help improve the 10th Street corridor from US 192 to Narcoossee Road. I think that's a great project that we could work on. Again, speaking with our lobbyists and also Mr. Hawkins, he would support that. I think that the initial corridor study should be completed in the summer of 2022, so fit right in that time frame where we can start that project and have money available. I also included Osceola legislative priorities from Olay, Osceola legislative effort. He's got the environmental. One of the things we did add in was Lake Runnymede boat ramp. As you know, that's a contentious issue to get the aquatic weed control. The state FWC is requiring us a boat ramp to be put in, so the county is going to pursue that, and we support that since it's in our, not in the city, but close to our city, and the county's interested in turning that park over to us if we can get it cleaned up. And I told them we didn't want to be responsible for the aquatic weed cleanup, but once they did that, we'd be glad to discuss with them taking that park on.
Well, that's certainly been a long one in the making, has it not?
Oh, I missed one. Federal legislation on behalf of the city of St. Cloud through Gray Robinson. Again, we still have earmark from Congressman Soto's office in the amount of $2.5 million for expansion of our reclaim storage facility, our pond, and that's still looking pretty good. Again, we don't know what the federal government's going to do right now as far as appropriations, so we're waiting for bated breath. We should hear something by December is what I'm hearing. Also, in the very back of the package, we did a survey of several surrounding cities in the county regarding the American Rescue Plan. I included that in the package. One of the things that I met with the auditors the other day, and they recommend we hire a consultant to do that. We're in the process of hiring a consultant to help us with that. There is a multitude of federal regulations and guidelines that seem to keep changing, and we're entitled to about $8.7 million. One of the things we want to do fast track before Christmas is to do the essential employee stipend for COVID. And so they're going to be working on that first as soon as we engage them. But some of the ideas that other cities have, City of Kissimmee took some of the ARPA money and $6 million in revenue loss, $1.5 million to recoup sick pay and hazard pay for employees, $300,000 for community grants to businesses, and roughly $1 million to neighborhoods and affordable housing. City of Sanford, they're using a decomposition project for the fire department, touch-free bathroom developments, transfer of funds to county for homelessness, water and sewer projects such as pipelining, water mains, and water meter replacements. Lakeland, They received $22 million, and they're doing wastewater, sewer infrastructure, nonprofit arts, financial assistance, small business, nonprofit financial assistance, affordable housing, and the Chamber of Commerce, and they had some unallocated funds. So I think it's prudent for us to hire a consultant to work through that. We have until 2024 to actually decide how we're going to spend it, and we have until 26 to actually spend the money. So I think we should be very pragmatic and really look at what we really need for the community with those funds.
Ms. Matheny?
Can you pay for the consultant with this money?
I believe so.
Okay.
Is there any opposition or questions about our legislative priorities at the state level, Chisholm Park Master Plan, alternative water supply, and the 10th Street Widening project? Again, those are evolving projects that both the lobbyists and Mr. Hawkins said they would support.
Councilmember Trace?
Thank you. All right. So on the AWS, I think that's perfect. On the 10th Street widening, can we call that 10th Street complete streets, 10th Street pedestrian safety improvement, something? Because I heard a lot of people pushing back that we're widening it to a 4-lane road, and we're not widening it. It's still going to be a 2-lane road. We're making safety improvements. We're taking a 100-year-old road and making improvements to it and making it kind of make sense with what's developed around it. But I like that as well. And then on any kind of road project, is that something that would be good on the federal level of some of the Build Back Better funds, if that comes around, the infrastructure package?
Yes, I met with Beth Knight, Deputy County Manager, and Tanya Laurie, their transportation person, yesterday, and we talked through some of those ideas and how we could prep the city to receive some of those funds, and they're willing to assist us with that. So, for example, Canoe Creek, the things we're doing right now will align us for those federal dollars if they come available, and we think there will be some. But like I said, they've agreed to help us with those type of allocations and help.
But Canoe Creek isn't our project to fund and design, no.
Correct. It's a county road.
Align us, align the county. Right.
Right, but we get blamed for it. It's our problem, but it's not.
I know, but I don't want to
No.
say align it, it's not our project.
And then on the boat ramp at Lake Runnymede, was there a reason why we would keep that private instead of making it, or government use only instead of having public access to it?
I had the same question.
Like, I don't know if there's like a requirement for that or,
No,
or something that the county pushed back on. Or.
Put some color on that.
Councilmember Matheny?
So I know that the county brought up and went to battle for Lake Runnymede in conjunction with bigger conversations around like the north lobe of Westlake, north of Neptune, cleaning that up. And then they brought this into the conversation. And then I know that the pushback from the jurisdictions were that there wasn't a like public boat ramp that serves. Basically what they're saying is we can't get over there to get into Lake Runnymede. And so the conversation was, well, you used to, like, why can't you anymore? So they came back and forth and said that boats changed, equipment changed, this, that, and then they can't get under the road. So then I know the county it's all requirements from them. Like basically, and it's a county park, and I don't think the county wants to make it a public boat ramp, but it has to be a government boat ramp, that way that Fish and Wildlife can use it to get in there and clean. So it's all like requirements that the county negotiated on on that boat ramp. But I mean, because the argument was there's a public boat ramp, as like you can get in the water on Chisholm or you can get in the water on the lakefront, but they said they couldn't get under the culvert. So I know that was a conversation they negotiated with that. And I don't know why they wouldn't want to make it public. I mean, I guess that's a question to ask back to the county, but I think they didn't want it to be in that park to be a public, because I think they didn't want it to be a public boat ramp. So.
Okay. And I don't know if it's just the management of it,
the
and
size,
maybe
and
that's one of those parks that
and
eventually become a city park anyway. So like, would we want it to be
right.
a public ramp, or at least canoe launch or something?
My initial discussions with Parks and Rec director, she didn't want to take it on, but I think if we get it cleaned up, because she doesn't want to deal with the aquatic weed control issue. So if we can get that under control.
But we don't take care of aquatic weeds, so
No, I'm saying the OLA as part of that agreement between the different entities. That's why they're pursuing that, to get the aquatic weed control. And then Beth said they would, once that's cleaned up, they would discuss with us taking that park over.
But I guess I don't understand why those two things are tied together with the park. Like, why wouldn't the city want the park?
Oh, I was just saying initial discussions.
Because well, you just keep saying, like, once it's cleaned up, we'll have the conversation, but I guess I don't see why the two are tied together, of having aquatic weeds in the lake versus taking the park.
I see. I get your question
Yeah,
now.
like,
They're not mutually exclusive.
well, they don't really relate to each other. Like, the county doesn't take care of aquatic weed control, so it's not like if we took the park, then we would be responsible for aquatic weed control. I mean,
I think that might be the assumption I was making.
yeah, but that's not, they're not tied together. I guess I'm just wondering why you're tying them together.
I am.
Okay.
Admittedly, yes. But let me.
It'd be different if it was a pond,
Right.
and then that would be like a city responsibility, but the lake isn't city responsibility.
Mr. Trace?
Yep, sorry. On the American Rescue Plan funds, I really haven't seen any good examples yet of anything that really is a needle mover. Most municipalities, it seems like they're just replacing funds that were lost, but
And we did some of that. We,
Yeah.
in our petty sales tax, about 700,000 we replaced. But the rest of it, you know, we've got some ideas, such as Hopkins Park, like to, you know, expand and refurbish that and, you know, put in broadband and things like that in that park. So that's one idea. So we're working on how we're going to propose that. But I'd like to bounce it off the consultant. Like I said, the issue is all those code of federal regulations, and then they put out guidance, and then, well, we really didn't mean that. We meant this. And there's also another bill right now in the federal Senate to make it more broad, that we can use it for different things.
and then we had a priority. I'm just going through my old stuff from last year and the year before, the welding program with OTEC. And the whole building thing, is that why that went by the wayside?
That's correct. Because of OUC's delay in putting their facility out here east, they went ahead and moved it to the OTEC campus.
Okay, so the program still did happen.
The program
it's just
did
a matter-
happen, but it
okay.
just didn't happen in St. Cloud. Now, interestingly, I spoke to the director of OTEC several weeks ago, and they're interested in bringing another program back to St. Cloud, an advanced manufacturing program they're working on. We talked to different ideas, so there's some still potential of that, but I just cautioned them again, we got to get OUC out of that facility.
Well, now have they broken ground on the new facility yet? Or at least close to it, right?
For,
Their new,
Joint use?
Joint use.
yeah, joint use facility.
no, I met with them today, Mayor and I did. It's going to be January.
Okay, which,
For the OUC building, right?
yeah.
Yeah, it's January. They're
Okay.
shooting for the groundbreaking.
And then in what was this for? The county's recovery plan funds, under county infrastructure,
What page you on, sir?
page 6 of the 2021 recovery plan.
Yes, sir.
Performance report. Extension of utilities and roads that could spur economic development, yada, yada. Did any of that get spent in St. Cloud, or do we know where those projects ended up?
No, I could find out for you. I don't know if, I'll have to talk to them.
Okay, it'd be nice to know where those happened, and if it's stuff that happened in the city, that'd be great.
I wonder who decides on which roads could spur economic development, because could we use this money to do the design for the 10th Street complete streets?
It said something about industrial areas, so I don't know if it's at least worth a discussion.
I'm assuming bringing on a consultant would also help facilitate the application process, filling out the applications and making sure all the paperwork was done?
That's correct. The procurement the financial accounting. We're already reporting the financial aspects. We haven't spent anything, so it's been pretty easy on finance. But as we start spending the money, we want to make sure they don't claw back on us.
Yeah,
And like I told Councilmember Matheny the other day, I've been through a FEMA audit. It's not fun.
yeah.
So
I can imagine it's a huge amount of paperwork, just getting all that filled out and getting it filled out correctly. Ms. Matheny?
So if you're allowed to use it to spur economic development, I've always heard like trails spur economic development. You know how we got the West Orange Trail, and then you've got Winter Garden made the complete turnaround, and I've heard a lot of it attributed to the trail and things like that. I mean, could we use it? I know we've got a robust trail master plan. Is that something we could use it for, to try to interconnect some key areas?
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? I really like the suggestion that Councilmember Trace made on changing the name of this from the 10th Street widening to some kind of safety improvement or pedestrian improvement. I think that would really communicate a lot better.
I noted
Sure.
that complete streets, pedestrian-friendly safety enhancements.
Yeah. I think that would, and that's true. That would be descriptive.
People
Anything
like
else?
sidewalk and drainage project.
Yeah.
Which is included.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Anything else from the council? Oh, that's a lot. Sure would like to get some of that, that money flowing here for sure. This time we'll come to our next item, which is discussion regarding the One Water Initiative, and I think Miss Marjorie Craig is coming to enlighten us.
Hi, and I have some of my best friends here with me, too. And Brian and I are color coordinated, as Veronica mentioned.
I
Marjorie
see.
Craig,
Got your A team here, okay.
yes, what is my title? Environmental Utilities Director. And some of this is going to be a repeat of what you've seen in August, so I'm going to buzz through that part. Bill told me I only had 7 minutes, so don't time me. So you can tell, as I told Councilman Trace, that an engineer put this together. It's very square and very beautiful because it's very symmetrical, and I'm sure Mary Emma could do something much better. But it's One Water Initiative, which is all water is important. It's all important. It's something that we need to value. Reuse is important. Stormwater is important. All of it's important. We've had no rate increases for water sewer reuse since January 2015. It's very important as we move forward that we implement many a suite of tools for demand management, for irrigation, and for all water conservation. So we talked about in August at our workshop the One Water Initiative, establishing reuse irrigation zones, and landscape irrigation efficiency initiative. And we were going to talk about the reuse rate recommendations, and I deferred that because Wendy was not here, our finance director, and I don't like to do rate presentations without having the finance director present. That's just not. I don't think that's a good thing to do. So what we'd like to do is do a presentation. We're just going to refresh on what we presented as far as our One Water Initiative, which is policy initiatives and also infrastructure initiatives to solve this problem or challenge, and then go right into the rate presentation. So with that, again, all water is valuable. It's important to develop a water conserving culture and to store surplus water during the wet season and augment reuse with stormwater and with any drop of water that we can. So again, it's Murphy's Law, and we can't always get the water where we need it and when we need it. We've had some challenges since 2007. During the rainy months, we have plenty of water, and we either store it or we inject it, and we have a deep injection well. And we are also working with Toho to store some of their reuse water during the rainy season because they have surplus water, and they may be able to even take off some of the edges. We may even be able to use some of that reused water that they have when we don't have some, and then inject some of their water for them. So, and then our alternate water supplies, we just don't have enough of it in the dry season. So we're looking at storing additional water. And the projected reuse demand is going to, unless we change the way we're doing things, it'll continue to increase. So we came to you in August with the two critical approaches, policy initiatives and infrastructure initiatives. And with a list of policy initiatives, one of them is to increase reuse rates. Why? Because the price signal shows value. And then we talked about establishing reuse zones. We talked about the stormwater ponds, demands. We talked about grants. Y'all have been very supportive about that. And we talked about infrastructure initiatives to optimize our existing resources and extend reuse. So, and I won't go through all of that. You have the list. So I'll have Cameron run through, just to mix it up a little bit. He's going to run through all the different reuse zones.
Good evening. Cameron Crandall, Deputy Director of Environmental Utilities. As Marjorie talked about, we presented this the first time in August, and one of our proposed policy initiatives would be establishing 4 irrigation zones. And this is based on existing conditions, and we brought in our engineering consultant, CHA. They looked at the hydraulic model just to make sure everything made sense. So here's the map of the utilities service boundary area. And these are the 4 irrigation zones. So the first one is the purple. That's the existing reuse zone. I'll go more into detail on these zones in a minute. The blue is the existing potable irrigation zone. The aqua color is the reuse limited to wastewater, and then the orange is the restricted potable zone. The potable irrigation zone, that's the blue. So this is the core of the city. This is some of the first development in the city. This is where they're using potable water for irrigation. Most of the time they're on they have a separate irrigation meter, different rate structure, but obviously we want to reduce potable irrigation as much as possible because we want to save it for potable uses, not for irrigation. The second zone, that's the existing reuse irrigation zone. And this is the development when reuse first came into the picture in the 80s. This is where we were using as much reuse as possible. It was more getting rid of reuse water than using it constructively. So a lot of these areas were designed to use as much as possible. And of particular note, up in the Narcoossee area, there's areas that have reuse pipes, but they're charged with potable water. So they're actually irrigating with potable water, and this uses about 560,000 gallons a day. So this would be obviously something we want to change, get them on true reuse. 560,000 gallons a day that could supply 2,000 or 3,000 new homes for potable water. The reuse irrigation limited to wastewater produced. This zone, this is one of our new proposals, and we've been working with developers talking about this, and they've been pretty receptive to this idea. The whole idea is that they only get as much reuse as they produce wastewater. At the wastewater plant, we're turning wastewater into reuse water. It's extremely efficient. We're talking about 99%, 98%. So the idea was we would design, or the developers would design their subdivisions, their neighborhoods. They would know how much wastewater they're producing, and they would design their landscaping and irrigation around that number. We've talked to some of the bigger developers coming in, Center Lake, Edgewater, Tohoqua, and they're working with us on this. We've also talked to the UFIFIS and some landscape professionals trying to bring as many people in as possible to accomplish this. And then finally, there's the orange zone. That's the restricted potable zone. So there's our areas of our utility service boundary area where currently we just don't have the means to serve them with reuse water. So this would where we would allow limited potable water irrigation. So stuff like misters, drip irrigation, low water use types. We would encourage Florida-friendly ground cover, Bahia grass, We would manage their use of potable water through their landscape and irrigation plans. But obviously, we want to make sure we're using potable water for potable water uses. You guys have any questions on the irrigation zones?
Councilmember Matheny.
I do have two. So what is the mechanism in Osceola County that prevents people from putting their own irrigation well in? Is that like the comp plan for the county, or what is that? Because I've heard that's not allowed, right? People aren't allowed to put their own well in for irrigation.
It depends on the size, I think.
Is there you got someone on your shoulder?
You actually can put your own irrigation well in. And you don't have to have, from my years working at the district, you don't have to have you can just go on and, get a permit online, or not even I don't even think you have to really get a permit.
I didn't think you were allowed to put wells. So are you not allowed to put a well for potable? Or what? I
Not
thought
for
there was a
potable,
restriction to you couldn't put sink wells, because I know people are always like, I'll just do my own well.
For irrigation, well, some people have existing irrigation wells already in the city. What's that?
Limitation is that
Yeah,
South Florida has what they call a general permit, which is anything that's less than 4 inches in diameter does not require a permit from South Florida. Just to throw a hint to you all, the city of Kissimmee has the ordinance does not permit drilling of wells within inside the city limits of Kissimmee. So in Kissimmee, you can't get an irrigation, even though South Florida would permit it, you can't do it because the city will not issue a building permit for the construction of a well inside the city.
Yeah, I thought it was prohibited.
No, it's not.
Veronica's nodding her head like,
Yeah, Veronica says we do have an ordinance that says that you can't drill a well, so I'll have to look that up.
okay, that makes sense. That's tracks with what I had heard.
Yeah.
But the second thing is, in all of the different initiatives you have there, and I know I talked to Brian about this years ago, but is there anything we're doing in the city to change the land development code? Like when a development comes in, they have to use their stormwater pond as a supplement to the reuse in their community. I remember like 20 years ago, Todd Swingle being here at the city of St. Cloud and him talking about this and wanting to, like, they were building the golf course ponds out there where the spray fields used to be, and he wanted them to oversize the ponds so that you had an extra foot or two of water in it and that you could pull it out for reuse. And I thought, what? He's crazy. What is he talking about? And then, fast forward 20 years, you're like, oh, yeah, he knew what he was talking about. But because when at the county, we went and met with Mr. Wheeler when he was still at his previous job, and we were like wanting to do a pilot program and convert some ponds and trying to say this is a untapped resource instead of just flushing it downstream. What if the communities had float switches and they pulled a certain amount of water out of here, and then once the pump went off, then it would be supplemented by reuse? And it also would help the numeric nutrient criteria stuff that is also going around in the county. But is there any conversation about that, like when new developments come in, to say you have to size your stormwater pond to be able to provide?
So until we
Whatever.
work that into the land development code, we've been working with developers on how they can get the irrigation that they want for their development, or that we still want people to have the water conserving culture and to use Florida-friendly landscaping and to conserve water as much as they possibly can. But we're starting to talk to them about using their stormwater ponds and optimizing stormwater with the reuse as well. So we can't use stormwater ponds. We can't have control of the stormwater ponds and then use reuse in them.
No, that's not.
Right.
No, like
but
they
they
would
can.
pull, like
They
tell the
can.
community, you have to pull water from elevation 67 to 65, and then once you run out of that water, your pump turns off and this switch flips, and then you have city reuse water until the water is available back. You're not putting the reuse water into the pond, but it's just like changing where the water source is coming from.
We could do that. They actually could do that if they. So what we are requesting is a master meter, and then they actually could augment their stormwater pond with reuse, and then pull it back out to do irrigation. We can't. We'd have to retreat it.
Well, we don't, I'm not
So-
suggesting your second option. It's
Right. But no, we
make
haven't
the
yet.
community, I
but
mean,
yes,
when
we're
the
considering
community
that.
comes in, we change our city codes to say, you have to use your stormwater pond for irrigation. We don't have enough water. Everybody needs to contribute, and these are the requirements. Boom, and put it in our land development code.
Yes, we are looking at that.
Okay.
That is the answer.
I think that needs to happen. When we built my church, we have 30 acres of land, and we went ahead and built our retention pond, our stormwater pond, so that it would be large enough for our full build-out of our master plan. And so we wanted to put a pump in it and irrigate our property with it, because we use it all the time.
Can you come
this
back
was
and
20
talk
years
to
ago,
us?
and they would not let us do it.
Can you come back and talk to us?
I'm ready to come, yes, because we use a lot of reused water. I mean, we use a huge amount, because all of our fields are used for soccer fields and parking and athletic activities, and we have huge landscaping everywhere. And we will definitely be coming back, because
So things change, of course, and so when I drive around Stevens Plantation and I see things are just soaked, and there's so much it's just, that's the way they designed it, because they just couldn't get rid of it. When I worked for the Water Management District and I toured St. Cloud, and I was so impressed with the wastewater plant here. It's one of the reasons that I was, attracted to St. Cloud, believe it or not, was just the city, the community feel, the plants themselves. I had toured both the plants. And the wastewater plant is really amazing. It's clean. It doesn't smell like many other plants. And the reuse, but they just could not get rid of the reuse. But it was really a great example of a plant that had highly treated reuse water, and they were, really doing the right thing with it. But, things have fast forward, and we just don't have enough of it. So we definitely have to do things like look for maybe some grants to try to retrofit people. And then, but it's going to take time to get some folks that are using more water and get those plants to be retrained and start to use that stormwater and change up the hydraulics of the way they use things. So what Councilwoman Matheny is suggesting is absolutely on point. It's a perfect solution for the way we need to move forward.
Well, I remember when reuse was free.
yep.
I remember when it was free here, and they were trying to give it away. I remember that, and then everybody got addicted to it, and then they're like, no, you got to pay.
Well,
Yeah, ours was free for
and one
about
of the other
6
points
months.
about this whole presentation, that when we go into the rate structure, so other places, just about everywhere in the state, have combined water and sewer funds. So in St. Cloud, they have a water fund and they have a sewer fund. Now, if you're in Tampa or somewhere, and y'all know I worked there for 18 years, they talk about a water fund and a sewer fund, but they're not really separate. They're combined. They're really combined in the end. They may have separate accounts and all that, but they're really combined. Here they are actually separate, and the reuse money has always gone to the sewer fund. But what we want to do, because it's so tied now to a water resource, we want that revenue to go into the water fund itself, because it's really a water resource. And because it's really offsetting any capital cost for additional AWS water resources. And so when we talk about the reuse rate increase, that is something that we feel is really important. So let's
Councilmember Trace, I think,
Did you have another question?
has his light on.
I'm going to go over my 7 minutes because of the questions. I'm just saying.
You have permission.
I'm just saying,
7 minutes was a full,
Mr. City
full errand
Manager.
anyway.
I know. It was a dream.
Could you turn that 3-minute light on?
No.
He's going to use that on me, not Keith.
So
No,
kind
these are
of
great questions.
tying up Ms. Matheny's comment of, I think in the, what are we calling this, the aqua zone and the orange zone, I think we need that flexibility of they can do storm, like if they want to use more water, then they're restricted to, like they can use storm water for, irrigating. If they do zero scape or something that they don't require any irrigation, then that's great, and that kind of helps the net budget of everything. One of my questions is, so we put a bunch of infrastructure in of the purple pipe essentially. When we're thinking through this map, are we kind of rounding out those areas of the infrastructure that was put in and make sure we're not just kind of jumping over it onto another area and just going to use that area that we've put in the pipes already. I just don't want to abandon what we've already put in, and we're doing a bunch of upsize projects. We're doing a bunch of other stuff.
So the hydraulic modelers did this, taking into account, and they're the ones that did our hydraulic master plans from way back and moving forward. And the developers, and they've worked with the developers with their utilities master plans, or what do they call them? Master utilities plans. So,
Okay.
but can I swear that they haven't goofed up something? You know, I can't swear that, but we're going to true up anything that is not right here. But I love having flexibility in plans, and a plan is not written in stone. So if we need to adjust things, we're going to do that.
Okay.
And anything that we can do that has flexibility and that adds flexibility, that's what I'm looking for. So when somebody says they have a piece of property and there's an opportunity to store water, and I've asked the city manager, can we go ahead and move forward and get an engineering estimate to go ahead and expand the storage pond, you know, in anticipation of getting a grant. Even if we don't get the grant, we're going to try to seek another grant. We're going to try to do something. Maybe I'll just, on the weekends, use the big tool and try to dig it out. I don't know. But we're going to try to do something to get more storage. We got to, if we can, you know, anywhere that we can get some more storage, I'm so customer service oriented, having to tell people we don't have enough irrigation water, we've got to do some things. We just have to.
Okay. And then I know we have another sewer plant planned on the west side of the Turnpike. Would there be a reclaimed zone around that would be kind of installed? Or is that the cyan or the aqua zone you're allowed reclaimed? You just net zero?
You know, that we have actually been debating that, and whether we could expand, whether we're going to need that plant, or whether we could expand the existing plant to cover that, the needs of the entire service area. The one thing, the hydraulic master plan right now, the pipes are sized for the second plant down south. So we're actually debating right now, and probably would want to have a bigger discussion on that.
Yeah, I just didn't know if around your plant you would want some sort of reclaimed use, just to make sure that you get rid of it, so you don't have to.
Oh yeah,
deal with
definitely.
It somewhere. Okay.
But we do have we have the injection well. But definitely we want to be able to get rid of it. We don't want to be in another situation where we can't get rid of it like before.
Yeah. Oh, so if you permit a new wastewater plant, you'd automatically be able to permit a injection well?
No, not
Oh,
automatically.
okay. So like that's what I'm saying. With a new plant, you'd have to figure out where to
Yes.
put the water. You can't. Okay.
Yes, yes, and as Brian has suggested, you might even start out with a little package plant down there rather than a. I know that seems like a dirty word, but you can start out with something that's.
I mean, Toho for years had issues over in Harmony just because there wasn't enough flow, and it probably was just a bigger plant than was necessary, and then the downturn, and you just deal with it for 10 years.
We did it in Polk County too. We had
Yeah.
a package
Oh,
plant
the
until we
pipes
had
issue?
enough. What's that?
The issue in Harmony, I think, was the size of the pipes. They put in pipes to serve the whole development. It's happening in Neo City right now.
Stagnation in the water pipes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The chlorine residual.
I'm talking sewer. You're on the water side.
She's on potable water. and
I'm
you're
on water.
reclaimed water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in Polk County, we had a package plant until we had the flow that was, you know, high enough to go ahead and build a full-fledged plant too.
Yeah.
So it's.
Okay.
But we're thinking ahead on how to do that. But we did also figured out how that we could expand our existing plant too to really just double the size of the plant. So, anyway, it's a sweet plant.
Said no one ever.
Just don't eat the tomatoes.
It's so funny because I was mentioning the tomato plants out there today. You already went through this part. Okay, not that part. All right, so the Landscape Irrigation Efficiency Initiative, the SCEP, which just is not that great of an acronym, but I'm going with it. This is something that Toho has in place it's patterned after a Toho program, and that they started several years ago. And we talked about it in August, and it's actually demonstrated reductions in irrigation demand. So you might remember that there's a checklist, it's Florida-friendly best management practices, and limits the high volume irrigation to 60% of landscaped area, micro irrigation, and operable rain shutoff devices. And then it's the key part of it is working with the homeowners and developers and the builders. So this is part of the written paperwork, and then making sure you have compliance before your certificate of occupancy. And then we could Brian said that they did spot certifications or compliance inspections and to see if people were compliant with what they said they did. Oops, what did I do? There we go. And then requiring St. Augustine turf. And the HOA what did I do? I could hear something. I said something wrong. In the rear yards, okay. No irrigation systems in the rear yards. So, well, anyway, so the list of additional requirements, these are the things that we would go look for and do the spot compliance reviews. So the last one, this is really what we're here to talk about mostly. The others were reviews from August. And this is the potable or the reuse rate, proposed reuse rate increase. So we have not had any reuse rate increase or any rate increase since 2015. We'd like to recommend that the council recommend a public hearing in February. And right now, our reuse rates are substantially lower than the potable irrigation rates, which does not send the message to conserve, which means that we don't value that water as a valuable resource. So, as we just talked about, reuse was originally effluent disposal. We were just trying to get rid of it anywhere. And so now it's a critical component of our water supply. We think that reuse is just about equally valuable as potable water for irrigation, and it's valuable, but it's available at a fraction of the potable price. So here are our existing rates, and we're not suggesting the for the potable irrigation and then the reuse rate for the various meter sizes. You can see the difference there. And here are the existing potable irrigation rates versus reuse rates for use. So, and the various tiers. So you can see how much less the reuse rate is than the potable rate. That's quite a bit different. So even though you're not taking it from the stormwater pond, Mayor, it's still quite a value. So what we've done is we have a recommended reuse rate that we've increased it to, but what we do know is that we do need to adjust this for our tiers. Our tiers, we have to get with Reptelis because our tiers are not quite right. Because our higher tiers would cause quite a bit of a jump for people that have a master meter. It would it double or?
No, it's more for your.
You got to come up to the podium, Brian.
Well, when we go, you need to go forward. But if you go forward and look at the impact on.
You need to get closer to the mic, please.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Not really.
So the your larger meters, which are going to be your commercial customers, you're going to find because you have a 6-tier system, and it's basically what I call a compressed tier system. They're not going to. If I got a 2-inch meter I'm irrigating with, I'm not irrigating down in the 5,000 to 10,000, 30,000. I'm using 50,000 plus. So I'm going to be my bill is going to be substantially impacted with what we're proposing on an increase. But if you had you really, because you need to change your tiers to adjust to what your customer usage is. So what we would propose would be a whole new tier structure for a 2-inch meter, which instead of having 6 tiers like this, you might have, again, what we did at Toho was we had 3 tiers, because your 2-inch meter guy is going to be using maybe as much as 1 million gallons in a month to irrigate with. And you can see, if you're looking at this tier right now, 95% of his bill would be in the tier 6 range as opposed to the lower tier. And that's really you're not really trying to kill the guy. You want to send a message to reduce the thing. So I think you want to redesign the tiers for your larger meters. You leave the same tier structure you have here if you want to for residential. It doesn't make that big a change, but for your commercial customers with 1.5-inch, 2-inch larger meters, you're going to want to have to change your tier structure so that you'll be fair. It'll be a fair process, fair rate structure.
Councilmember Matheny.
Hi. What was the rate that you're charging people that have potable water in their reuse lines? Are you charging them reuse or potable?
Potable.
Potable.
Okay. Just
Member
wondering.
Trace.
So I, surprisingly enough, don't irrigate my yard, so I don't know how much irrigation water people use. Normal size lot, watering, what, twice a week? Is that what you're allowed? How many gallons would you use if you irrigate zones for an hour, twice a week, or whatever?
Well, it's not how much you. The question is how much do you use versus how much you should use, and that's what we're.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're trying to combat. But
Right,
I don't have a barometer of how much that is.
Surprisingly, your average residential customer in St. Cloud's probably in the 6,000 to 8,000 gallon a month usage, which is not too bad. But you'll see, we'll show you some customers. You have some customers who are using 21,000, 25,000, which is probably 3 to 4 times what they need to be using. And part of what you can see here is they're not getting a price signal that tells them, well, if I go from 10,000 to 11,000, the increase in my bill is not significant enough for me to care about trying to dial it back down.
And if we implement this, we're going to mail those individual people. I mean, there'll be something in the bill, but like the special people, they'll get a extra little mailer to say, hey, you're going to be.
I mean, part of the
it's going to triple, like, surprise.
Part of the purpose of the way the law is set up is if you agree, you have to give the customers 60 days notice of a potential rate hearing. So that's what we're coming today is, and that has to go in the bill because of the billing cycle. We'd have to start that notification process in November, and that would set you a public hearing date at your first meeting in February. And so what you're doing there is you're telling the customer, you're going to have a hearing at your council meeting in February that we're going to talk about raising the rates, and we would provide them with information about what those rates are going to be so they can see what the impact is going to be to their bill. And then, even after that, they would know what's going to happen. But the idea is to get them educated well in advance of what the change is going to be so they can adjust their behavior.
Okay, and I just want to make sure that most people wouldn't even know kind of how much they're using or whatever they see it on the bill, but if it's that big of an impact, if the people that are abusing it just need to have kind of an extra little nudge about it.
Oh, no, correct. I mean, you're right, because I don't do anything, and I'm that guy at the 20,000 gallon level. When I get my first, if you agree to the rate increase, when they get their first bill, they're going to see suddenly their bill went up like $40. And they'll be calling and what happened,
Yeah, let me give that some thought and see if we can do something to let them know about what they would, what their bill might be if
Because if you do a scatter plot of how much they're using in their meter, like you'll see the 10% of the customers that are really using it. So just make sure that they know that this is coming down the pike. Because the one I remember, this is a couple years ago when Toho implemented the tiered rate system. I heard a lot of pushback from folks and it might have been before you guys did the different meter size something. There was.
We went.
Well, when you go to a water conserving rate structure, then there's usually some.
When we changed it, you're right, and this comes back to the thing I'm mentioning about the large meters. We had, as I remember, we had over 400 irrigation customers on reuse that had meters that were 2 inches and greater. I had customers who were using 10 to 15 million gallons a month for irrigation.
That's a
So
golf
we-
course, hopefully, right? Not just
Well,
a,
golf courses were a special case. They have a whole different, we had a whole different rate for golf courses.
Okay.
But, so we went back and did what we now call a budget rate, because people who are using large meters to irrigate large pieces of property, the amount of water using is driven by how much landscaping they have. And so just because I got one 2-inch meter customer may have 5 acres of landscaping, another 2-inch meter customer may have 10 acres. Well, the 10-acre guy can't get down to the 5-acre guy level because he's got 10 acres of landscaping. So we went to doing what we call a budget rate, which is go to that piece of property, look at how much landscape irrigation you had. So what's the efficient method? Let's say it turns out to be a 1/2 inch a week. You can calculate what a 1/2 inch a week of water is on the property. You come back and say, if you stay within this band, your rate will be a low rate. You go 10% above what you use, and you're going to get hit with a substantial jump in your bills. So that's where we tried to equalize that. But you're right, the first go-round, a lot of those large irrigation customers were really crying.
Yeah.
That we have to do.
well, and that almost seems like a perfect situation of a shallow well or stormwater instead of just having to adjust to make it make sense. If we can do a shallow well, that,
Right.
I don't know. So hopefully we'll have flexibility in some of those.
Yeah, we'll have to,
Seems to me, I thought it was interesting in our last council meeting, I think it was the last one, we had this lady here trying to make a presentation about using native Floridian plants and grasses. And what part of the argument I met with her was so many of these things, especially some of the grasses, require so much less irrigation than, St. Augustine and even Bahia. And it just seems to me that there needs to be some kind of thought, workshop, planning given to not only looking at the irrigation, but combining that with landscaping requirements that are asking of developers, especially if we're going to start saying, lifting the percentage of native Floridian plants and grasses. Anyway, just a thought.
no, these are all great thoughts.
Ms. Matheny.
Thank you. You saying that somebody's using 20,000 gallons a month. What did you say down there? What's going on? Did you say hit the timer?
No, I said, Mr. Askew finally turned his light on, so I just commented. I said, you turned your light on.
Is there any thought process to limit how much water you can have? 20,000 gallons is a pool. It's a swimming pool.
It's 2 pools.
Yeah, it's I think my pool's 13,000 gallons or something. I don't know how much my house uses either because I'm on a master community meter that's paid by the community. And but I'm just wondering if, and I don't know whose house at it, but if let's just say it's a standard lot and then they're just watering, excessive, is there something we want to do in the city and say the maximum you can get per month is this, and then it cuts off that super excessive high user?
That's what we're talking about here right now. If they
Well, I'm not cutting them off. But.
Well, no, but the idea is that you're penalizing them, so you're giving them a price signal, and the idea is you find what I call the pain point. At which point does the price get such that they change their behavior? But let's be realistic. There are some people, and I've experienced this throughout my career, and Marjorie probably has too. Some people who cost doesn't mean anything. They have enough money. If I have to pay $200 to irrigate my lawn, I'll pay $200 to irrigate. There's nothing you can do about those people. But the majority of people,
Except cap it.
Well,
cap the amount.
that gets to be physical. But those are small. There's a small number of those people. There isn't thousands of people out, but there's a small number out there. But the rest of them will respond when you hit the right price point. People will respond.
Yeah, it's I don't know how many offenders there are, right?
Yeah, I don't either. But I'm just saying. We're short of water, so.
Councilmember Askew.
So on the same presence of 10th Street, can we rename this to conservation of water, environmental? When you just come walking up here going, yeah, we're rate increase, why? So I think if you're explaining it, that it has to do with environmental reasons and, climate control, whatever you want to throw in there. But.
Absolutely, and that was part of I think the reason the name of the One Water initiative, but it's really a water conservation initiative. It's not really about, I mean, certainly we need a rate increase. Going 7 years without a rate increase is a very, very long time for any utility system. And we've made do for a very long time without a rate increase. Especially we have some pending alternative water supply needs. And our rate consultant has shown that we will need to make some decisions on some rate increases in the future. They're not as high as we'd once thought, but we will need to make some moving forward. And we just found out actually our sewer rates are lower than Toho's are. Our water rates are higher, but our sewer rates are lower. I didn't know that. But we do need to make some decisions in time, and one of them will be we need to raise our reuse rates. And we'll need to raise our water rates at some point, and probably raise them a little bit every year, and start raising them a little bit. And if we don't, we won't be able to do the alternative water. We need to do the right things, but not just raise our rates. That's not the only thing we need to do. We need to conserve water. We need to treat every drop of water as a resource, and we need to optimize our existing water resources and continue our partnerships with the county and with Toho. And no matter what happens, work together as a region to bring people here and to optimize our water resources and partner as much as we can.
So, what do we need to do? Because Councilwoman Matheny brings it up over and over again. A new development, can't we make something where they have to build their pond and their reclaim comes out of their own internal structure? Is that we're working with the county? But we seem to talk about it, but we're not. Doesn't seem like anything's happening. So,
but it is happening.
Yeah, I think don't underestimate. If you all agree with the zone concept that Cameron and Marjorie presented, by going to the point where you're telling somebody with a brand new development that all they can get for their irrigation is the amount of reuse water they generate wastewater, that's a substantial restriction on their irrigation. That's going to drive them from a standpoint of landscaping to figure out where am I going to get enough water from, because they can't they can't put in a nice landscaped entranceway and do a nice common area and have house irrigation and do all that with the amount of reclaimed water they're going to be allocated for their development. So they're going to have to sit down and start to say, where am I going to get that water from? It's going to be stormwater, it's going to be shallow wells, and it's going to also be what the mayor just said, it's going to be different types of landscaping. We're not going to be doing the traditional type. You have to get more and more back to water friendly. So it's really putting the incentive to them. We're not coming to you and saying you have to do A, B, and C. We're saying here's all the water you're going to get. You show us how you're going to be able to landscape your property and not use any more water than what we're going to allocate to you. So we're leaving them with the idea of you come up with the ideas. We're not going to dictate to you, but we're going to tell you.
Yeah, the developers are very creative. I mean, we're not the only place that is like this, frankly. There are other places that have the same restrictions, the same requirements, the same limited water resources. We are not the only place. Edgewater has it in their agreement, the last four that came in. And we'll be making, it's going to be, it's standard. Every single development, we've talked about it with every development that's come in. Every single one since I've been here.
So, I like all the conversation and the idea and the one water and all that. But for me personally, I don't want to get into any kind of rate adjustment or anything until after we vote on the Toho agreement. That's just my personal feeling. Like, if the Toho agreement happens to go forward, and then we've said, hey, we're going to raise rates, it's like I don't know. I just feel like we need to have that conversation and either move forward or put it to bed, for me personally, before I want to talk about any of this stuff. And I just asked the city manager when the vote was, or when they're supposed to bring it back, and he said January. So for me, I don't want to kick the hornet's nest or go into any of this stuff until after we have that conversation.
But this is just a workshop to talk about bringing it forward, and if we can advertise that we're going to have just a public hearing in February, that's all.
I don't want to do that either. I don't want to advertise. I don't want to, you know, I mean, if the playing field can completely flip in January, I don't.
Well, I kind of agree with that. I would also, you made a statement, I like small incremental increases rather than waiting until you have a problem and now you got to make this huge jump that just really creates a lot of storm. Coming up with some kind of strategy where you're increasing things, if that can be done in small increments as you go along on a regular basis, rather than come up with these big increases that just kill everybody, that nobody wants to support it. Just a thought.
Oh, yeah, well, in this case, the reuse, the reason is not because it's to send the message about conservation.
Yeah.
And it's not the potable rate increase, it's not a sewer rate increase, this is for reuse, and this is for conservation.
Understand.
So, you know, it's certainly the pleasure of the council, whatever y'all want to do. But it's something that we definitely need to do in order to start conserving water, especially before the dry season again. That's the problem. If we don't, you have to advertise 60 days before you have the hearing. That's the problem.
Right.
And if we don't advertise now, starting like November 18th, then it becomes a, you know, if we wait till after January, then it's April, and then you're already starting to get into the dry season.
Councilmember Matheny.
I guess I feel like it's been 7 years. I mean, a few more months before we make the decision. I just don't want to, I mean, I made my point. I don't want to make any decisions before that vote.
That's one of the recommendations, to have a public hearing in February.
Right, but they're going to put it out now.
Yeah,
That we're
you
going to
gotta-
we're going to do a rate increase.
Mr. Trace.
Can you flip the slide to the one that compares? There you go. Existing reuse, recommended reuse.
So we actually talked about just going to the Toho rates. That'll make it easier.
Well, and that's one of those, if the Toho thing goes through, the rates are going to increase even more than the ones that are advertised now. So you almost lose a dry season of rates, I guess. Because if Toho takes over, they'd still have to do the same advertised rates, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if the entity changes. It's still a rate change per statute, right?
Yeah, and we could just tell Reptelis to just go to the Toho rates. The structure.
Or
That's fine.
in between.
I'll put on my other hat now.
He's gonna put
So
his other
when
hand
you,
down.
based on well, because I've done this before, based on the decision you've done with Toho doesn't mean that your rates will go up to Toho's rates. That would be part of your agreement that you make with, that you make with Toho if you decide to go with Toho.
There's a big difference as you reuse. Do you have anything else?
That's true, but it has to do with the signal. So, I mean, to me, that's still the price signal.
I'm just trying to correct. Councilman, automatic going to Toho doesn't mean automatic the rate goes to the rate. That's not an automatic thing.
Yeah, for me, this is about the price signal. So that's what I'm concerned about. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate you listening to me, and I appreciate all your support in the past and in the future, and all the questions, and we will take all of that back and work on it.
Thank you very much. That's the best 7 minutes I've ever seen you do, so thank you. Excellent.
I'll work on that.
47 minutes. It had a 7 in it.
Mayor, I have an answer to the boat ramp question if you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I guess I still need direction because I'm not sure exactly
understand.
what.
There wasn't consensus.
Yeah, there wasn't consensus.
The mayor and Councilmember Matheny would like to
it was a no.
put it on delay.
Delay.
Hearing?
I mean, there's no rush, really.
Can us wait.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Matheny.
So I texted the county engineer to ask him the question why it's not public, and he said It does not need to be public to get FWC to spray the lake, and it's being constructed on conservation land, and the parks director at the county is the one who did not want the ramp to be open to the public. And then they also were keeping in mind residents that live on the canal and making it a noisy, busy boat ramp. So that's why it's not public. So it's county land that is being built on, and the county doesn't want it to be public. So I assume if the park switched over to the city and the city wanted it to be public, then that's a conversation that could be had at that time.
Right.
But then we're going to hear from the residents that were told that would be a government use only forever and ever and amen, right? Or it's not going to be designed and built to be used every day.
I don't think it is. I mean, I think the idea was it's just to have enough access, and the city can use the boat ramp. You know, the county can use a boat ramp, the city can use a boat ramp, but it's just not open to the public. And there's a boat ramp at Chisholm right nearby. I don't know if they...
Yeah, I was looking at this as a different type of boat ramp for canoes or just other stuff instead of having to have them launch from the same area as
Well, you
boats
could-
backing in and whatnot.
I
Make it
suppose the
passive.
city could make that, right? If the city took the park, then it could say it's open to kayaks and canoes, non-motorized,
Yeah.
whatever.
Because, I mean, it's not like you're putting a big boat in there anyway because you'd still have to get under the
Yeah.
bridge, right? So it's not going to be massive
Right.
speedboats. So,
Yeah, I just-
anyway.
But I think you've made a good point. I think it'd be, if we can communicate to the county, don't make promises that this is going to be forever a private and it'll never change, and at least don't communicate that because you end up with the Muddy Road situation.
Now I have a headache.
Everything comes back to Mutter Road.
That's what I say, that's why I have a headache.
The circle of life.
Do we have anything else?
I have one item.
Sturgeon.
Next Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I'll be out of the country. Veronica Miller will be the acting city manager. I'm going to go try the 7 Seas on a cruise.
Okay.
So.
Got all your shots up to date?
I do. What a,
Extra
well, I
mask
can't
and
say
all
that
that.
publicly. It's been a pain.
All right. Well, I hope you have a great, enjoyable, safe trip. Do we have anything else from the council? I'd like to thank all of our staff for all of your help and for being here. We appreciate you guys did an excellent job. With that being said, we are adjourned.